Hey everyone, I'm Miranda and I'm part of the campus community team. This is the place where we commune and connect in Christ through Christ-like conversations. Come, let's get right into it.
Okay, so before we start, since we're doing a career conversation, all right, let's just introduce our names and what we're doing. Sure. All right, I'll start. We'll go this way. So I'm David, and I am unemployed. We're studying mechanical engineering. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Sin Hui. I'm working, and yeah, I'm a farmer. No, I'm not a farmer. I sell vegetables.
Hey guys, how's it going? So I am Lily, and I'm the head of HR at a consulting firm.
Hi, I'm Keith. I run my own business, pretty much a janitor at my place, but I run a few things as well on the side. Yeah.
Can we get a louder round of applause for them? Okay, so you guys mentioned that HR and you run your own business, right?
Yep.
Okay, and obviously you guys are like married stuff. So let's maybe dive a little bit into your past, right?
Okay.
So maybe you guys can summarize for us how you guys ended up being married and how long have you guys been together for? And after that, talk about your career journeys.
Sure. Thanks, guys, for inviting us here. Okay. Do we have the slides? Are you going to shoot the slides up? But okay, never mind, while the tech team kind of figures that out. So both Lily and I, we met each other when we were studying overseas in New Zealand. That's where we went over to study. I went over when I was after PMR, which is like I went there after 15, so 16, thereabouts, right? And that's where we met. We are each other's first girlfriend, boyfriend, if that's... Oh.
So cute.
And then we've been together since. There you go. Oh, gosh.
We were each other's prom dates.
Yeah.
Finishing up high school. We were pet brother, pet sister. I don't know whether y'all do that anymore.
What's a pet brother?
Okay, never mind. It's so embarrassing.
Zaman dulu. When you're really good friends with a guy.
Yeah.
But
you
it's
kind of
not
like
really
them.
like kind of
Yeah, but then you don't want to commit, and then you just kind
It's
of
like really good friends.
Situationship.
Yeah.
Situationship.
Is
but
that what
you're
you call
really
it?
good
Okay.
friends, right?
Alright,
So we
yeah.
can pet brother
Yeah.
and sister.
Correct. It's weird.
And then when I was 16, wasn't I?
No, I was 6. We're 3 years different. So I took her to my prom when she was 14. And prom was like, what, over there was 17.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend who took a girl who was 14 as well. And they gave him so much like heat, or whatever you call it. But a lot of issues because he took a 14. I said, don't say your age, okay? I'll be in trouble too. But yeah, you can see that's our picture there. We hung out a lot. We did a lot of things together in CF, over at uni, and then we eventually got married in 2012. Yeah, that's... so this is our family. So we've got Olivia, who's over there.
Multiplied.
Yeah, we've kind of multiplied physically. Next slide. Yes, so that's our family. Olivia is there, and then we've got Zach as well, but he's not here. It's bedtime. And we're very happy, and we've been planted in SIB since 2014. And we're very happy to be here and really just seeing how things have grown both in our lives, our families' lives, and even in our careers.
And super happy to spend time with you guys today.
Yeah.
Really encouraged by the worship, by the heart behind the worship, the testimonies. So hopefully we have a really good conversation today.
Okay. So we run a career?
Yeah, so you guys can maybe share a little bit of your career. And also, we will have the Mentimeter QR code on top. So if you guys have any questions, just scan it and shoot. All right.
Okay, so we did something really visual. I know you guys are kind of like scanning all your Mentimeter thing, but so I mentioned if the team can put up the next slide, it'd be great. Then I can kind of run through the slide as we go along. But I started as I mentioned earlier, I went over to New Zealand. Oh, wow, okay. So hard to
So
see.
corporate, right?
Walao eh.
So corporate.
Okay,
I
'cause-
might be blocking some stuff.
Yeah, okay, never mind. If you cannot see, mind, just trust me. Okay, so so I'm 40 this year, and I'm an old dinosaur. But I think one of the key pivotal moments was when I moved over to New Zealand in 2000. If you can see over there, I was like 15, and had a lot of amazing stories, meeting different people, being in a different culture. Graduated, came back to Malaysia. That's another story we can share a bit more later. But started basically my career in I'm very diverse. If you can see all the different places that I've been, right, in different industries. People always ask me, so what's your background? I say, I've been in construction, I've been in advertising, I've started my own business, I'm in healthcare, I'm in everything lah. But a lot of it, so a key area was actually when I was working with my family business. It's a very blue-collar industry. Nothing flash, it's very dusty. We used to do trading for building materials. I used to go to job sites, meet contractors and people like that. But that gave me a lot of foundation to a lot of the things that I would later on build in my career. Resilience, and also talking, especially, look, English is my first language. I don't speak a lot of Chinese. I don't speak Mandarin. But in a blue-collar environment, everybody speaks Cantonese. So I just had to learn along the way. Spent 4 years there, eventually moving out into tech for a while. And then after that, I started my own business, which is in healthcare. So I currently run a chiro and physio practice. But since the pandemic, kind of take out your eggs out of one basket, and I started and pivoted into other different areas as well, which I can share later on. So very diverse. Then maybe I'll let Lily share about her journey.
And by the way, since I was a young girl, I always knew that one day I'd marry a businessman. Yeah, I also had actually a vision of Keith as my husband when I was 16. But we can get into that later. So even though he's done a lot of things, as you can see from the screen on the top half, when he decided to go the business route, I kind of knew it already because I felt in my heart that God would pair me with somebody who had a heart for business. So I'm on the bottom half, which is probably blocked by all of us. But to highlight, I know what you see there, it is really testing my eyesight. I was in Malaysia until I was 9, so my Malay is really bad. So I was only here until I was standard 4. And then we moved to Thailand because my dad got a job there, and I lived on the sunny island of Phuket for 4 years. Yeah, like tourists, millions of tourists in and out, and I was there studying, right? So there's one international school on the island, and that's the school I went to. So I was there for 4 years. When I was 13, I moved to Auckland. First week in Auckland, I went to church, and I met this guy. Yeah, so I met him when I was 13. And then I finished up high school. I did uni. In New Zealand, there's something called a conjoint degree. So you do 2 degrees. But it's like a combo, It's like 4 years each. But if you do it together, it's 5 years. So I did a Bachelor of Arts in French and Law. And I did a Law Honours, which is like a extra 1 year in French linguistics. And then went off to France to teach English at a university in Lyon for a year. Then moved back to New Zealand to finish up like the law stuff, wear the wig, be admitted to the bar. And I promised my parents I would complete that whole qualification before then coming back to Malaysia. So when I moved back to Malaysia, I joined a social enterprise named Leaderonomics. You guys might know it. And it was really small at the time. I was there for 4 years. After that, I had my first kid. And then I moved into education for 2 years before joining where I am right now, right, in HR. And the reason I moved there is because of a client that I met during my days in Leaderonomics, who had basically for a few years been telling me, hey, I think you'd be really good in HR. I think you'd really enjoy working at this place I'm working at. And so I took her up on that and took that risk of moving industries into HR at the age of about 31. And since then, I've moved from looking after first the Malaysia consulting team to then moving to a regional role, reporting to a boss. Then about last year, she told me, Lily, I'm moving to Switzerland. I'm taking on a global role. And so from last year, then I took on her job, and now I lead the team. Yeah. That's right.
So impressive, right, David?
Yeah.
Nice. I think, thank you so much for sharing, your journeys. I think it's so interesting. Before we get into the topics, I think just to explain how it's going to work, right, is that we're going to have the Mentimeter up on screen. So anybody can scan, it's over there. Yeah, anyone can scan the Mentimeter, and then as we go through the popular questions that we have about career, we will also be checking to see if there are any questions that will pop in, and then we will answer them along the way. And if there are any questions on the floor, you can feel free to raise up your hands, and then someone will pass you the mic, and you can stand to answer your question. Then we will answer your question. All right? Yeah. Before we go into the topics, I just want to know, how many people here are studying? Raise your hands. Okay.
Wow.
Most people are studying. How many people here are working? Working? Okay, there's a few. All right. Not bad, huh? Okay. So I guess one of the very first questions that came to mind about career is that, before I even step into the workplace, I have a lot of seniors that come up to me. They'll be like, seniors, before you get into workplace, it's very important for you to not be friends with your colleagues. Have you guys anyone ever said that to you before, to not be friends with your colleagues? I don't know if you guys have, but I definitely had a few seniors telling me that. So maybe for Keith and Lily, what are your thoughts on that? And do you have any experiences behind this topic?
Yeah, I think it was a very interesting question. And when we were discussing this, and she actually shared, Sinhui actually asked, really asked the question. And we're like, oh, I thought about it. Then after that, the thought that came to mind was, if we think about it, Judas was at the seat at the dinner table where Jesus was having that Last Supper, right? And Judas was also called to be a disciple. It's the response after that of what you do. So there's two responses which I kind of shared with them earlier when we were preparing. There's Judas's response, and there's also Peter's response. Now, Peter also was told that he was going to be denying Christ, and then he said, no, I won't. And the story, right? Jesus said, by the time the cock crows 3 times, you're going to deny me, right? But coming back to your question, whether we can be friends with our colleagues, I think it's just taking that posture that Jesus took, like, Judas, come, you're part of this as well. And I think that's the posture we should take as well. I think we need to know where we are in Christ. And if we see ourselves as the last Great Commission, what was a Great Commission? Go into all the world and preach the gospel. And we see ourselves as that light in the marketplace, then our perspective should change. Is that everybody that we come across at work can be someone that we can invite either to a campus night, or it could be someone that we can invite to church on or for Christmas or something like that. Yeah.
And I think friendships have kept me sane at work, right? I can think of so many days where it was really, really hard, and a colleague just coming up and is like, how are you lah? It's like in that Instagram story that you all shared, how are you lah? Ayo. And because they work in the same place, and if you say, man, what happened today? They'll be like, oh man, it must have been bad, right? There's ability to relate, and there are friendships that I have over the years that have sustained, right? Even while I've moved different companies. I guess what Keith was insinuating at was, I assume from that question and the person who gave that advice, maybe there's a fear of what happens if you be friends at work. Is that
So
what's the fear here?
So I think the mindset or the thought process behind this question is that I think a lot of my seniors, they always say like, oh, don't be so close to your colleague. Later they backstab you, or like they use it against you. They tell your boss, and then just don't trust them in general. Because I've been hearing so many like horror stories from my friends, and then like I myself also like I'm very afraid. So even though like my team, okay, thankfully I praise God, like I have a very good team. They always check out on me and stuff. But sometimes when they do ask me personal questions like, oh, how are you doing, right? Then I'm always like a little bit afraid to share too much, because like I would think to myself like, oh, are they going to use it against me, right? Yeah.
So I think it's good in those situations or whenever we get advice, right, from very well-meaning seniors. I'm sure all our seniors are well-meaning, right? Kind of test the advice and think about it. What's the heart behind that advice? And what I'm hearing is the heart behind that advice is fear. Fear of the worst case scenario, right? So I caution against like making our life decisions on an advice based on fear. I think there's another thing that we can do to test it, right? Kind of look at the fruit of somebody's life. If they've been applying that kind of principle and maybe they've been working a few years, kind of observe it lah. Like, how has that advice worked for you, right? Maybe it has worked them okay for them, but in a kind of a defensive mode of relationships. And maybe they find that they haven't built such a good community at work as they could have, right? So, kind of test what's the heart behind it. Plus the whole, what we see Jesus do, right? He built relationships with everybody. Yeah. So what are we really fearing, actually? And there's a place for wisdom, and we ask God for insight, just like we ask God for insight in everything we do, right? Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks so much for
Hope
sharing.
I answered the question. Yeah.
Definitely. Okay. My next one will be more towards hiring new people, right? Because you're your own boss and you're in HR. So when you guys hire people, I think all of us would like to know what are the main things that you guys look at for someone. So for example, if like someone's an academic weapon, 4.0 CGPA, or if they are experienced, like fresh grad but have a 2-year experience or something, I don't know. Some people look for like some mad experiences. Or number 3, character. I mean, you wouldn't really know someone's character until you properly get to know them, but what do you guys look for? Yeah.
Okay, I have my own practice, and I'm in charge of hiring now, right? And when I first hired people, I first hired based on academic. Running a healthcare business, you'd think that would be the key thing. But also you have to understand, so I'm being very practical here. I run a chiropractic and physiotherapy practice. So if you know the nature of that kind of work, you need to be able to communicate well, and you also need to know so you need to be brain smart, book smart, and talk to people smart, right? So I look at all of that. I first hired based on academic at one stage. Then I realized, actually, after you watch a lot of videos, you read a lot of books, leadership books, then you realize actually academic can be taught some of these things, right? And then my recent hire, I hired based on character. I didn't even ask the person for their qualifications or whatsoever. I just took them out for lunch. I took them with a colleague of mine. We had lunch. We asked the person about their life, what they thought about this, what about that, everything. And I just prayed and I said, God, I'm going to take this chance. Hired. He's been one of my best hires that I've hired recently. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think adding on to that, right? When we're hiring for a job, we will look for minimum qualifications. Not to say we will hire somebody who did psychology to do physio, right? But I think, do we kind of rank like 4.0, 3.9? Okay, we take the top. We don't. But we do hire very good people. I know we have some friends in the house who are also working in the same place where I'm at. We do hire very good people. Especially when I'm hiring for my own team, right? Where I become very, very, very specific. I actually like people who ask very good questions. So I even allocate extra time, and I've started saying, ask me 5 good questions. And I just pass them the mic, right?
So if someone asks you, like, how was your day? Is that a good question, or?
No. You know what's the worst question?
What?
What are the benefits? I know it's a practical question, But to me, it shows, are you really interested in the job? So every year, the World Economic Forum, right, if you Google it up, every year the World Economic Forum publishes the top skills needed in our time. And year on year, it shifts one, because the world is changing. What you see at the top, right, and I think it's number 2 right now, is the ability to learn and the ability to solve problems. How do we do that in a world that's shifting very quickly? We have to be curious and curious about the right things. I know you're curious about benefits, curious about who is my next interviewer. But this is not the time, right? I want to know what's really on your mind. And I find when they are naturally curious about, what are the key problems you have right now? Or what's the business trying to get at, right? Or I read on this that you guys are focusing on this and this. Why? And I find those have been the best hires I've made. Because then, even when they come onto the job, they know how to steer their own learning. And then they're very self-aware. And they just keep learning and learning and learning.
I think it's also important that when you go into an interview, of course you're nervous, right? But also try to put yourself in the interviewer's shoes for the role, and you need to stand out, right? So in that sense, you're not asking questions in the sense like what Lily said, is what's in it for me? But it's then thinking about, okay, my skill set with my academic, my qualifications, my experiences especially, how can that benefit your business in wherever you're working? So, with your sum of things, whether your experience part-timing, working at Decathlon or something like that, how do you then add and bring that kind of experience and that package into, the role that you're fitting in? Yeah.
Hey, part-time work is awesome.
I
Good.
I always ask, I will look at the CV when someone sends me a CV or something, but I don't look at the qualifications, I go straight to the work experience. I love people who have had lots of work experience. The reason, so let me qualify that. The reason why I say it, because I realized how important it was when I didn't have it. So when I went over to New Zealand to study, you had the whole mindset that I'm over there, I'm there to study, don't muck around, focus, serious, just study, do exams, that's it, right? But I had friends who would work part-time. I had a friend of mine who was driving forklifts at the supermarket because, he's worked there very long already. Then when I graduated, and then the interviewer asked me, okay, can you name me some times that you have worked in a team? And I scratched my head because all this while I thought you were going to ask me, how good were my studies, how good were that and all that. But they didn't ask me any of that. They just asked me about my experiences working, how was it like working with a difficult colleague and stuff like that. I said, I don't have any of this. So it was, I think, a year after I graduated, I quickly went to applied for as many part-time jobs as I could get. I was just while worshiping, I remembered. I actually went to do door-to-door sales for vacuum cleaner. Back in those days where you sell vacuum cleaner.
I forgot that.
Yes, yeah. And then I also went to sell. Sometimes some people come to the shops or the place, right, or house. They sell the Pizza Hut stickers, the coupons or something like that. Like you buy $30 and then you can kind of coupon it. No?
We are younger than that.
Okay, never mind. There was a time where you could buy...
He's always lifting on his hand just now, so he lifted his
No, because I bought one recently, I think about 2 years ago. I helped one guy out. But you buy coupons, and all that kind of... So that's what I was doing. I was going door to door in New Zealand, like in the middle of winter, right, in my 3-piece suit, crazy one. I should have knew it was a red flag there already. We were going to knock on the door, people are having dinner, hey! And then the guy that I was partnered with was like, what? I was like, wow, this guy is xiao leh, But yeah, that was one of the things lah. All experiences lah, do everything lah. Any kind of part-time work, yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. It must be so cold, eh?
It was, yeah. I remembered we worked. Oh, that was hard. That was like after that I said no, I'm not going to do this role because it was I started at 8 and we finished only about like 6. Yeah, it was 8 to 6. Yeah.
Actually, right before we continue with the questions that we have.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell everyone what your major was? And you're doing chiro right now, right? So what's your major?
Okay, so no, I'm not a chiropractor. I actually studied physics. So I graduated with a B Science in physics. But a lot of my elective papers were marketing papers, and I realized I actually enjoyed that. So I failed quantum physics twice on an international student's fee. Yeah? God bless my dad. He was so kind. And then what else? Oh, and then I also, so some of the elective papers that I did, which was very interesting, was media studies. You could, because you just needed points. But it's actually interesting. It's actually helped me to frame a lot of how I view media now, which is very interesting. These things kind of add up, yeah.
After physics?
After physics, I actually did a graduate diploma in business. And I actually did quite well in that. And I actually realized I wasted my time doing physics at the end. But I was committed because I wanted to finish up what I started. And then I realized, okay, once I'm done with this, I can actually, it becomes a little bit more clearer about what I actually wanted to study. And then I went straight for that once I graduated. Yeah.
Wow. That's mad. We've been getting a few questions from Mentimeter, and I think one of it is pretty related to the interview question, right? So actually somebody asked, what do you think of candidates that jump ship a lot? So basically what jump ship means is they change career pretty often. Yeah, so does it help for career progression or does it look bad?
It looks bad. So a few thoughts, right? Obviously, if you have a pile of 20 really good CVs, I'll probably gravitate to the ones that show that they have stayed a little bit longer in the role and deprioritize the ones that seem to move. Now, of course, you guys are still really young, right? But if, let's say, over a pattern of 10 years, somebody is constantly moving, it raises natural questions. Why do they move? Why are they always moving? Natural questions can be is it that they don't do well in the role? That's why they move. Or are they always moving for money? Now, if somebody only works for money, it's very hard to keep them, There will always be another place that can pay you better. Now, I flip it on the side of the person working, right? If I jump every year, does it pay? Probably. It probably pays better because that's the only reason you jump, right? You get a better deal, right? 15% jump here, 15% jump here. In the shorter term, you probably do get, if you compare to your peers, you probably do get a hit. But in the longer term, I think there might be problems with depth of skill and credibility, which will come and be tested when you start getting into leadership roles. Because let's say you get a really tough project and you got to implement it and you got to lead a team. How much experience have you really had? Because you've only been in this place for 1 year, in this place for 1 year, in this place for 1 year. I interviewed somebody recently, right? And they couldn't tell me the outcome of something because they said, I didn't stay long enough, right? I had this idea, it was a great idea, very good, right? Tell me what was the outcome. I moved by then. So I would caution, right? Because we got to think a little bit longer term, yeah? About our roles, about careers, kind of links to God principles as well, right? We want to be good at what we do. We want to build depth, and that takes time. Personally, what I found to really impact not my work, but also really see the impact of investing into relationships, I found it takes at least 3 years, at least. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. Actually, yesterday, I was also interviewing somebody, and on the person's resume, he was he had so many experiences. And then when we interviewed him, and then he also jumped ship a lot, 3 months, then leave. Then 6 months, then leave already. So when we saw the resume, we were like, okay, this guy is a bit sus, but all right, let's just interview him and see what happens. Yeah, interviewed him halfway through. My manager next to me, he's like, no, cannot drop it. Because it's too, yeah.
Yeah, I think coming from a business owner point of view as well, right? If I see somebody jumping so much, then it also raises question, if I hire this person, even though I have an immediate need for this position to be filled, then I'm going to invest so much into this person in training, and then after that, 2 months, 3 months later, he or she leaves, then I'm stuck. I got to restart the whole process again. Do I want to take that risk? No. I would just say, no, thank you, bye-bye, yeah.
There might be legitimate reasons also, yeah. I'm not taking that away. If you happen to have gone through this, something happened in the role, or you just realize, oh, this is really not a right fit for me, that's also fine. But in an interview, when you're asked about it, almost always gets asked, right? Just be prepared to give a thorough explanation on why. Yeah.
So Keith, you spoke about like taking risks, especially as a business owner. And I think we would also like to know, what are some of the bigger risks that you take when you open a business? And maybe you can share about how many businesses you've opened or tried out, and where has it led you to today?
Sure. Okay, so I was quite fortunate when I started my practice. My partner at that time, he was the main chiropractor, and we started it together. So he handled more of the professional side of things. I handled more of the kind of like the front of house marketing, because I'm very good at talking. So I would always like sit at the front, talk to patients coming in and see them out and everything. So in terms of the risks part, with that, of course, there's huge risks, right? Financial risks as well. But I had my faith that, okay, he's the one kind of in the business, kind of running things. So fast forward 3 years later into the business, he decides to migrate overseas. And I'm like, oh, I'm dead. And this is really having to rely a lot now on hired professionals. So where do I go from there, right? So it's then after that taking the risk and trusting that every decision you make would have an outcome that will benefit the business in the long run. But that being said, they also decided to leave, and I then had to rehire, and that's when I started to be very smart with how I hire, find the right kind of people to do the job. And then, as you know, COVID hit, and then that was when I think something was quite pivotal, and I wanted to kind of touch on like what the Z shared earlier in his testimony. I think part of it is also the identity of, because COVID happened, the pandemic happened, I couldn't run the business, we couldn't open, and that means zero income. So I had to take all my income was all coming from the business, right? And that was the moment where I realized that I think I was having my identity to the business, because you put in so much effort, hiring people, running it, leading them, managing them, and all that. It was then at that moment when I told Lily, and I said, I think if really it means putting more income on the table is me driving a Grab car, then I would do that, because I think that was really my identity was just on my business. But thank God, God's been very, very, very good, because I think it took me in the whole journey. The pandemic was a really good season for me. It really kind of molded me, broke me down, take all my trust away. So up until that point, my walk with God was good, but it wasn't very consistent. But it was during that time where I then started waking up every morning at 6 o'clock and do my quiet time, journal. And then it was from there, trusting God, praying, and then suddenly doors started to open. I was very happy, was very fortunate, got opportunities to do digital marketing consultancy, and all of that became very organic. So when you say the risks, right, it didn't seem very risky. The risks were very low. Recently, I started 2 other businesses. It's dealing with medical devices. That also has a story in itself, where it was actually a friend's business that we kind of like know each other from uni days. And I said, hey, you're doing a really good thing in Singapore. Can I bring it in? So then that opportunity came about. And with the other business that I started, it was because it's a continuation actually of my family business. It's my dad's business, but we wanted to shut everything down. But we had some existing clients, and we said, why not try and pick it up? So just restart. So in terms of the risk, there are risks, but it's minimal. And I think over the years of running the practice and the business itself, I've kind of know how to navigate through and know how to spread my risk in that sense. Yeah. But you won't know until you just try. You start. I mean, these days, starting up a website, buying a domain doesn't cost you that much, less than $50, and just run with it. Yeah. You could just sell anything. Just a side story. When I was in uni, there's this online platform in New Zealand. It's called Trade Me. And it's, I don't know what it's the equivalent, like maybe like Carousel over here, sell secondhand stuff, right? But yeah, it was pretty much secondhand. I used to have random stuff that I have lying around the house and I'll sell it at a profit. Then there was this time I went to a Ace Hardware kind of equivalent. They had little keychains which were $1. I actually hiked it up to $10 and I sold quite a few of that.
Wow.
So you
kind of flipped it.
people.
I didn't scam them.
Willing buyer,
Willing buyer, willing seller. I was very happy. Yeah, there was one guy that actually complained though. He said, not about the price, but he just said that your postage fee very expensive. Because I charge on top of that, right? Postage is $3. And then if you are a bit further, I charge you $5, right? And he said, it's too expensive because on the stamp that I use paper envelope stamp, it was only 80 cents. He said, I disagree with this. I was like, okay, I refund you your postage, but I still make money.
That's great. Business owner at a young age. Wow, love it lah. But thank you so much for sharing. I think like what I really caught from that is like, when you were doing your quiet time from God and slowly God opened so many doors for you. And I feel like that really reminded me about a verse that I came across recently, Proverbs 16 verse 3, commit to the Lord whatever you do and He will establish your plans. And I feel like it's so important for us to sometimes really just like, when we're feeling lost or like if we are not too sure where to go, right? To really just surrender it to God and trust that God will open doors for you, right? And even running on that thought, I think a lot of us as campus students, I'm not too sure about you guys, but at least for me, I think a lot of us, we struggle with navigating on like, oh, what do I study next? Or like, what course do I get into? Like, when transitioning from like college to university, or even like when university, you're going out to work, right? Like, what do I do? So I have a question, like, if God doesn't speak to you about what course to take, what do you do? Have you guys ever experienced before, like, you just feel so lost and you just like, you don't know what is the next step to take? Yeah, what is your experience?
Okay. Maybe you can start with this one, but if I could just add on to that verse that you brought up, about when we feel, who here has felt lost before about what to do? Yeah.
Me.
Yeah, we all do, right? By the way, as we get older, it's not like we feel it less, okay? As a life partner, as a wife, what I observed in Keith over the pandemic years? He sums it up very neatly, right? He said, the pandemic season was a very good season for me. He can say that now, but it's very difficult, because when there's only so much cash, right? Who gets paid first? Staff, right? And I saw this guy really commit to, when you say 6 a.m., rain or shine, no matter how cold, no matter how late you sleep, right? He's up at 6. And I saw him build that discipline of just learning how to be with God and letting God be his letting God be his anchor. Yeah. And he worshipped at a very different level, right? There was a maturity that grew. Was it easy? Was it instant? No. But I think when we put in place these disciplines, right, and this is a great thing to build foundationally at this age, like that disciplines of just knowing how to rest in God, knowing how to let him minister to us, still us, is so good, so important. Yeah. Okay, do you want to share about how you got into BA, how you got to your physics, B physics?
Okay, so when you are in primary school, you know that after you finish standard 6, you go into, or you finish preschool, then you go all the way primary, finish standard 6, you do secondary, whether it be IGCSE, IB, whatever it is, there is always a next step, right? Then come to college. Do I do ADP? Do I do this? Do I do SAM? I don't know what the courses there are now, or CLP or whatever it is. You kind of, then you need to see your guidance counselor, your career counselor or whatnot. Then it gets a bit like, okay, now it's 50-50. What do I do? Do I do this? So it's the same way for me. I did everything science because that's what when I was in New Zealand, all the Asians do science because we're Asians, right? So I did that, all of that, only to reach university where now you get to choose what you want to do. And I was like, I really don't know what to do. So the good thing about it was on my final year at high school, I actually did a workplace internship. Like one day you go and see which company you apply and you do a workplace thing. I was very fortunate to get a one-day observation with a telco company over there, one of the biggest one. And I really enjoyed it, so I went through the engineering. So I thought, okay, I'm going to study telco engineering, only to be denied entry into engineering because I wasn't an A student, I was a B student. Lucky worse. But I said, never mind, I will push on. So I saw, okay, I will try. All the first year papers were all physics. So I said, do physics. Do. After first year, my average was C. Then I said, never mind. I told myself, I cannot go into engineering. I just pursue on. I look at my options and I said, okay, if physics is what will get me out of university in 3 years, let's just do it, right? And then I just continue on with physics. And then, like I said, when I shared earlier, a lot of my elective papers were all marketing. Yeah. Sorry, you. Oh.
Intermission.
Oh, okay, intermission. Roll in. Okay, yes.
Oh, okay. So you said something about Asian parents wanting people to do science, right? Right. So how many of y'all over here, you guys are doing something that your parents wanted you to study? Raise your hands.
Oh, we have a few.
Okay.
Richard's
How
raising
many
his
of y'all are genuinely doing what you wanted to study? Raise your hands. Oh, that's really good.
Not bad.
Okay. So, in the case for like the two people, right? For example, their parents want them to study something and they didn't want to do it. Should they pursue what they want to do? But will that be dishonoring to their parents? And as parents, what would be your viewpoint on this?
I don't think we're able to give like general statements here, right? I think this is totally case by case. Maybe something to consider is what is really your parents, what are your parents wanting you to do? Why? Is that a strength that they've seen in you since a young age? Right? Is what you want to do something that they don't see aligns with your skills? Or sometimes Asian parents being well-meaning, they don't see how you can make a career out of it, right? I think it's important to talk those things through in the spirit of honoring our parents and really understanding that. There might be ways to be creative about it. Again, like I did a conjoint, right? I did law and I did French. And thank God for that, because there were days where I was so sick of reading cases and I could go to French class and like have fun, right? So is there a way to... Yeah. Is there a way to kind of be creative around it, right? So I think it's dangerous at this point to just say yes or no. I think it totally depends on the circumstance, but talk through it, right? Because our parents have known us since a young age, and they might notice really natural talents in us that we might not be aware of ourselves. I don't know. Yeah, depends.
I think when we were thinking about this question, I gave a very boomer answer. I said, hey, as long as you're staying in my house, as long as you're not paying rent, I tell you what you do, you know. But I think that's not the right way. I think what it is also is sometimes sitting down with your parents and talk it through with them. And I think that's the most important thing, because also the Bible says we need to honor our parents, right? So it's understanding why do they think, and I think like what Lily said, they might see something in you that you don't see yourself, and you might actually be very good in it. You just need to try. Yeah.
And do internships, right? Do internships in the field that, let's say they want you to go do accounting. Go do internships. That's okay, but 1-2 months, right? And then they can observe how you are as well. If you're coming home and you're like, oh, mommy, daddy, I'm hating this, right? Then you have more stuff to talk about with them, right? Tell me again why you want me to do accounting. Today what happened, right? It's a safe space, right? Internships are awesome. Or like if there's a chance to go and shadow a doctor, right? If our parents really want us to be doctors, right? Then you faint, right? Because you see blood, you're so scared. But then, oh, mommy, I don't think I can do this, right? But like just put yourself in a spot where you can have more experiences in that area, and then that will hopefully help the conversation that you may be having with your parents.
Yeah, I always had the wrong perspective last time when I was growing up. People, I didn't want to do part-time work because I always thought people who do part-time work only just need the money because they're very poor. But then on the other side, when I started becoming an employer myself, then I realized, hey, actually very important. So I always tell prospective or actually uni students that I come across who are studying specific fields, I always say, go and get an internship. Don't worry about your holidays. I say, if you can, your summer break or your whatever break that you have, the 2-3 weeks, just go and do a 1-week internship and be useful in internship. No, don't just go to an internship and then not be useful. What I mean by that is just ask, okay, is there anything you want me to help you to be done with? Even if it's just data entry, whether it's just stapling something, but it's at least you can observe, open your eyes, observe, see how they interact. Oh, okay, like that one, yeah.
Wow, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing. I think even for me, right, like, I think my own experience, like, there were certain times where I told my family that, like, oh, I wanted to study this, I want to do that, and everything. And then my mom always be like, oh, you can make money, man. Or like my dad would be like, hey, you can make money, man. Are you sure you want to do or not? And I think at that age, I was very frustrated. Like, I was very like, why they don't let me do like what I want to study? But at the end of the day, now that I'm a little bit older, I realize that, wow, they actually just really want the best interest for me. Yeah, and they really want to see me flourish and do well. So yeah. I think maybe for the next question, it's very similar to this one. So I think some of us may wonder, can your calling change? I think for both of you guys, like your career progression, your career path is not linear at all. Like you guys studied physics, studied law, but then never really end up doing what you guys studied. Can your calling change, and how do you know when it's time to move on to a different path? Do you have any experiences or stories?
Yeah, so I guess that question assumes that we all only have one calling, right? In terms of career, I don't think our world works like that now, right? Even every 5 years, you see an evolution. You see so many new type of jobs popping up. So I think it's in the world today, it's quite acceptable that there is your career may evolve. I think for me, I did law and French, like I mentioned at school. I always went into it for the skills more than anything. Law helped me to kind of get rid of my perfectionism because I realized I was with 200 people who were more perfectionist than I was. and that was a painful lesson. But it helped me to communicate a certain way, be more succinct, structure my points. And that helped me coming into the social enterprise and doing anything basically the CEO wanted to do, right? It was kind of like a business development role. And I think that was okay. And by the way, I also did internships in law firms while I was studying, which helped cement in me that, okay, I don't really want to be a lawyer, but I really like what I'm studying. And I'm studying really, really good skills here. I think what happened, because the social enterprise was quite young at the time, kind of like startup environment, right? I just had to do everything. And of course, us wanting to do things well and honor God, in doing everything, we actually learn more about ourselves. And I realized I really like people. I really like kind of having one-on-ones. I really got a kick out of seeing people grow. And I think over time, that then cemented that, okay, I think I could really... I could get into a job that's working with people. And obviously having that business exposure, working closely with CEOs always helped me to have empathy with the business, which is very important for HR nowadays, right? There has to be business acumen. HR is no longer just operational. We want to be side by side with the business, a seat at the table, that we can have important conversations together.
Yeah, just to add on, I lost my train of thought, but okay, so in terms of experience, every role that you do is a sum of experience that leads you towards your calling, if I were to call it, right? and like with my roles that I've done in the past, everything had a specific reason that adds on to my next role. Of course, before I went into the next role, I did get a bit lost, like in a sense where I got a bit stuck. What am I doing? But it's just trusting and obeying God in those moments and saying that, God, I'm going to put one foot forward and this feels like it, I'm going to go. So when I was working 4 years with the family business, most people would say, you work with family business, you take over the business. But it was a sunset industry. My father, when he brought me in, he also told me, you're coming in to learn how to do business. You're not coming in to take over the business. So at the very start, my dad was very kind to set that expectation. I was like, phew, lucky. But then after that, I got really bored and I actually wanted to move. But where did I go? I was really stuck. Somehow I met somebody who was running his own tech development house, and he was looking for someone to do BD. Joined him. After a while, I didn't like it, but I learned a lot of things. And I actually found out that I actually started talking to some of the customers in a very different way, in a sense where they would come up with problems and I tell them maybe this is how you should solutionize it or something like that, which wasn't related to my business. I'm thinking I shouldn't be here. So then I got the opportunity to start the practice, and I realized that actually talking to suppliers, and project managing from start to beginning for certain projects from my family business, dealing with contractors. Now I have to deal with my own renovations for my practice, dealing with sometimes difficult situations at work. And then we had to do presentations for prospective clients when we started the practice at the start. I learned a lot of that from my days as working for the app developer, because you're meeting various different people. So a lot of it was some of experiences moving in, yeah. So you don't really have like a linear line, lah. Yeah.
So was this like for you, Lily? Did this happen as well, or?
Yeah, for sure. I actually went from smaller companies to a larger company now, right? So, but the beauty of working in smaller companies is you see more. You see everything. It also means we have to do more things, right? I remember one day my boss said, hey, we're going to start 16 pages, we're going to publish 16 pages of content in the Star from like 2 or 3 months' time, right? And you and I are going to do it. And then we hired 1, 2 people and they just start doing it, right? But you learn to be really hands-on, and you learn, because you're close to, the leaders are less layers away, you learn what's on the mind of a leader, a business owner. I think it also helped me that I was married to a business owner. And I think going through that and just being really hands-on on, okay, how can I help you? What do you need to do in your business? And having that for 4 years, and then after in 2 years as well in education, right? In that kind of role. When I came into HR in the consulting business that I'm in, it allowed me to empathize quicker with the leaders that I work with. You can kind of see, kind of read their facial expressions, what kind of the pain points that they're feeling, because in a way they're like in the position of a business owner. And so I found that was all really useful. Yeah, of course, law is great for like employment, right? So like dealing with contracts, or if there are certain like, kind of sensitive issues, having that law background, like I'm confident with like clauses and all kinds of stuff, right? That helps for sure. Yeah.
It seems like you guys have been doing like so many different things, and God has really led you to so many different like paths. You know, I actually have a follow-up question for this. You know, like, how do you know whether the desires of your heart are from God or is it from you? Like, for example, God has placed like an idea, like, oh, maybe you should try out this path or like this company. How do you know it's from God, or is it like your own desires?
Okay, maybe I'll be a bit interactive a bit. Okay, how many, so quite a few of you have put up your hands in terms of you're currently studying, right? Let me see those hands again. Who are currently studying at the moment? Okay, of all the people here that have your hands up, how many of you here, you actually prayed and asked God, and you felt this is where you're supposed to be? Keep it up. All right, so it's all of you, right? Some. Okay. Some put your hands down. Okay. So I think you have some people here that they can go around and ask each other and say, hey, how did it work for you? How did you feel? What did God say to you? Because I think God moves in very different ways in terms of really confirming it for you and how, hope that kind of like made sense. Yeah.
So the question is about how we know if what God has put, what is in us is from God. Is that it?
Yeah.
Because we're not sure what we're feeling. Can you clarify a little bit more?
I think it's a little bit more of like, maybe like for my case, like previously, just to like summarize, for my case, like previously I was about to do medicine actually. So for you guys, like if you guys didn't know, like I almost did medicine, then halfway through, like I realized that, this is not my calling. Like I think God's calling me to do something else. But at that moment, like I really struggled with thought because I wasn't sure if the calling or the desire that God has placed in me, it's from God or is it my own desires?
Okay. I think I'd go back to kind of settling into how we hear from God, right? I think there was some of it in Z's testimony earlier. Z, where are you? Do you know where Z is? Yeah, there's right? It's like a process, right?
Yeah.
Unless, God in an audible voice. Has anybody here heard God's audible voice before? Sometimes it happens, yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing? He's just like, Lily, study medicine, right? Often it doesn't happen. Sometimes it's a process, right? It's a conversation. We sort of put ourselves in a position where we want to hear from Him. For me, God speaks to me through, most of the time, is that sense of peace. And He leads me through in His peace. A couple of times, like I said before we got together, I've gotten a vision. There was one time I kind of felt a physical touch. But most of the time it was understanding and feeling that sense of peace. And over time, hearing what His voice sounds like in my heart. Right? And this is something that will be different for each of you because He may speak, again, audibly to some of us. He may speak He may speak in different ways. I think the analogy that I really like from a pastor that visited our church maybe 10, 15 years ago, he lived in Canada and he lived next to an airport, right? And he heard planes taking off and landing so often that from the sound of the plane, he could tell the model of the plane.
Oh.
Now, inside of us, we know our voice, right? I hope we know which one's our voice lah. But there's also that still small voice. And actually, over time, if we train ourselves to recognize it, we kind of hear more and more, which is the one that's coming from God, which is God's voice speaking to me. And it's okay, that's a process, right? So I actually started from the age of 13, 14, journaling. And I journal, and I write down what I feel God is saying to me. And I have it written down. And what I would do is actually kind of test it, right? Now, is this aligned with the Word of God? Is this aligned if I go consult people who I know who have strong walks with God? Is this something God would say, right? And over time, that becomes more familiar. Oh, that still small voice, that's God, right? And so it means that over time and over the years, it makes it a little bit easier. And then we don't get so confused, right? Which one is my inner voice? Oh, which one is, the devil trying to put something in me, right? And which one is God's voice? I think that's a familiarity that we can build with time.
Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to Campus Community, where we commune and connect in Christ through Christ-like conversations. If you would like to keep in touch with us, feel free to follow us on our socials at campuscommunity.sibkl. Do keep in touch and see you in our next conversation.